Hello and welcome to the End of Confusion, and today's topic in general awareness is Indian Banking History Part 1. Before starting the video, it's a request from our side to like, comment and subscribe our YouTube channel for unlimited access to all the content and all the videos that we have to offer. And also do download our Mahendras app, that is a 2-in-1 app that consists of the Mahendras and the Mahendra Guru features. Well, without further ado, let's start with the discussion on the Indian History Part 1. Now, before starting the discussion, the end of confusion in the general awareness section would comprise of systematic manner of topics. For example, in this particular video, we would focus on Indian banking history part 1, then part 2, then RBI, monetary policy, and so on and so forth. So, without further ado, let's see what we have in store in the Indian banking history part 1. If we discuss about what is the first evidence or what was the first bank in India, it has to be the Bank of Hindustan in 1770. This is perhaps the evolution of the banking in the Indian system. Now, if we discuss about how the banking transpired, it can be divided into three different parts: phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3. Now we would focus primarily on the phase 1 in this particular video, and then in the phase 2 and phase 3 in the next videos. Now in the phase 1, the period divided is from the early phase of the primitive Indian banks to the nationalization of banks in 1969. In phase 2, we would focus on the nationalization of India banks in 1969 up to the advent of liberalization and banking reforms in 1991. And then the phase 3, that would comprise of from the Indian financial banking sector reforms 1991 to today's current picture. So let's see the phase 1 of the Indian banking history. If we discuss about the phase 1, we already discussed that in 1770 we had the first bank that was called as the Bank of Hindustan. Similarly, in 1786 we had a General Bank of India that was set up. Perhaps that was one of the biggest banks in the pre-independence era, and it also failed in the next century. In terms of the important banks made by the British, the first bank that came into picture was the Presidency Bank, and that too in Calcutta. That was known as the Presidency Bank of Calcutta. That particular bank was the first bank of the British Empire. It led to two other banks in Bombay and in Madras. Now these worked as, and this is a very crucial word, these worked as quasi central bank. That means that they were not the centralized banks, not the nationalized, not the central bank, but they had so much of a revenue that they were a part of the central banks in the country, and that too for many years. Now in terms of the different dates, the first date that is important in terms of the presidency banks is the 1806, and then 1840, and then 1843. So these are the three dates that you have to keep in mind for Calcutta, Bombay and Madras. Now the big thing that happened was in 1921. There was a notion that since these are quasi central banks, they are not that far in their expansion in terms of the total India area, so they merged these three banks, thereby creating a central bank of sorts. Perhaps that was not approved by many, but yes, that was a central bank in sorts of the revenue and the amount of capital that became the Imperial Bank of India, and that was because of the merger of three banks, that is Bank of Calcutta, that is Bank of Bengal, Bank of Bombay and Bank of Madras. We will discuss Imperial Bank of India at a later time. Moving forward, the Imperial Bank of India in the later time, in the after independence became the State Bank of India. Now that is after independence. Now before independence, there was another bank that has and still holds crucial significance, that is the Allahabad Bank. That particular bank was established in 1865 and is still working today. Now if there is a question that which is the oldest public sector bank in India that is having branches all over India and serving the customers for the past 145 years, that has to be the Allahabad Bank. Now the question, if it may come, that could come perhaps, would be that which is India's oldest joint stock bank, and that has to be the Allahabad Bank. But if the question arises that which is the oldest joint stock bank ever, that is Bank of India, established in 1863 and failed in 1913. Now the obvious question arises is what is a joint stock? Now in a joint stock, the shares are divided in between the owners and also some natives of that particular place, leading to a joint stock of shareholders in which some are owned by the original owners and the rest are owned by the natives or the people who have that particular ownership. So that is a joint stock bank. So the first bank of the joint stock was the Bank of Upper India, and the oldest joint stock bank ever is still working is the Allahabad Bank. Moving forward, there was a particular word that is a bank with limited liability. That is, it led to the modern banking scenario, that was the Odd Commercial Bank. So a question would come that which is the first bank with limited liability, that is perhaps the predecessor of the current scenario, that was the Odd Commercial Bank, that had the banking features that we can see today itself, that was set up in 1881 at Faizabad near Lucknow. Now, there was a particular concern among the people that the banks set up by the Britishers or by other people were not customer friendly. Those particular banks focused on the urban rich, on the traders, and all those people who had the money, who had the moolah. So that led to a consensus among the Britishers that if they want the entire revenue to be under a single umbrella, they want to have a certain bank or certain banks that would provide more ownership, more comfort to the Indians. Now that led to a bank that was purely managed by Indians. That bank was called as the Punjab National Bank. So it was a bank that was managed completely by Indians, and that was established in Lahore in 1895. And this is the perhaps most important point in the late 1900s. That is in the late 1800s. That is the Punjab National Bank, the first bank to be purely managed by Indians. Now, if we discuss about whether this bank was a Swadeshi bank, whether this bank had the ownership and also the management completely of Indians, well, that is not the answer. For that, we have the Central Bank of India that was wholly owned and managed by Indians, and it was set up in 1911, and categorically it is called as the first Swadeshi bank in India. Now, the era that is between the 1860s to 1911s, that perhaps could be called as the rise of the banking system in India. But like always, after a particular high, there is a tremendous low. So what transpired in the coming generation, what happened between 1911 to the current scenario, that we will discuss in the next video. Do keep on watching our videos for the second part, and we would present you second part in a couple of days. Remember, your success is our success. Thank you so much. Do like us,
comment on our video,
and subscribe our YouTube channel.
Mahendraguru.com.
the Brahmast for success.
Your success is our success.